Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello.
After our last episode, I've been thinking a lot about family, our extended family, parents, grandparents, and all that.
Yeah, me too. Because what we ended up talking about afterwards was that not everyone actually has that in their life. And that is important to acknowledge also.
Yeah, it really is, because sadly, that's just how life is sometimes.
Hmm.
And by the way, just so you all know, having this podcast, sharing as much as we do, it always leaves us sitting afterwards saying things like, why didn't we say that? Or maybe we should said something differently, or yeah, and also like now we think about the next topic, right?
Hmm, exactly. And on top of that, also, it makes us reflect even more afterwards. When we sit down to edit and talk things through, we end up really thinking deeply about all these topics. It has been such a fun and inspiring journey so far, I have to say.
Yeah, it's almost like therapy in a way, or can I say a life study. It stirs up a lot of thoughts and reflections and emotions too, and of course we learn along the way also.
Absolutely. And that's also what's so beautiful about this having a podcast, having the chance to share all this, both between us and with others, and to learn along the way, also, as you say.
Yeah, exactly. And after our last episode, we talked quite a bit about this, about how not everyone has close family in their life. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes because of circumstances or even loss, and sometimes because someone wanted them out also. I mean, everyone has their own unique story, and family doesn't always mean safety for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Or definitely not. And that's also life. It looks different for all of us. And we usually find ways to adapt to the life we live, one way or another, though some manage it more easily than others, it seems like.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we wanted to talk about this today. What happens when family isn't there? How do you find belonging, support, and connection when the traditional family picture doesn't quite fit your life?
Yeah, because family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people you choose, or the ones who choose you, and the ones who stay.
Very true. So let's dive into that, the meaning of family, belonging, and finding your people, even when life doesn't quite turn out the way you imagined.
Should we start by saying that our grandmother is doing much better? She was at a short term stay after the hospital in a nursing home to recover for a week. But the nurses there made a decision that she was too strong and independent to be there. So this Friday, she got to go back home and she is so happy. And that's a happy update for anyone who's been wondering since the last episode.
Absolutely. She's doing really well now and was so excited to be back home in her apartment. And that's just amazing.
Definitely. So there we have it. That is said.
Yeah. But it also makes it a bit difficult now, doesn't it, to talk about how lucky we are when we know that not everyone is as fortunate as us.
Yeah. Today's topic is a bit heavy in that way because we know not everyone has been that lucky.
Exactly. We know that there are many people out there who had to break ties with their own families for different reasons. Sometimes it's been absolutely necessary just to find some peace and live a good life.
You mean that their families have brought them more burdens than joy, in a way?
Yes, exactly. I have several examples of that, actually. So I know for sure that sometimes it's simply the best thing to do for everyone involved.
That sounds very sad, really, I have to say. Especially when I think about our own family and how much it means to us. But yes, I can still see that sometimes it really might be for the best.
Yeah, it does sound really hard, and it is. It's never an easy choice. I don't think it ever is, but sometimes it's, as I said, necessary.
Maybe that's where we should start then, by talking about what it actually means to have a solid, loving family in your life and what that does to us as humans compared to when we don't have that.
Good idea. Let's start there. So, the research on this is pretty clear. Growing up with stable, supportive family relationships where you feel safe, seen, and cared for is one of the strongest predictors of both mental health and physical health later in life.
Yeah, I've read something about that too. That feeling of belonging actually affects your brain chemistry, right?
Yeah, studies show that secure attachment in childhood helps regulate the body's stress system. And that's literally how the brain and nervous system respond to challenges. Kids who grow up feeling safe develop more balanced stress responses and tend to handle life's ups and downs better as adults.
So basically, love and stability becomes your internal safety net, you can say.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. It doesn't mean life won't be hard, but when you've learned from an early age that the world can be safe, you also learn that pain and conflict don't mean you'll fall apart in a way.
And that must be what makes it so devastating when that safety isn't there, or when it's taken away by neglect, conflict, or even abuse in some cases.
Yeah, the research shows that too. People who grow up without that foundation often struggle more with anxiety, trust issues, and emotional regulation. And this is important, it's not hopeless. Even after a difficult start, resilience can still be built later through stable relationships, therapy, community, or what we sometimes call our chosen family.
That is actually quite beautiful. It means that even if your family couldn't give you what you needed, it's still possible to find belonging and healing later in life.
Oh, absolutely. Humans are wired for connection. It's never too late to form healthy bonds, even if you have to start from scratch as an adult.
So, do you have any examples, stories you've heard, or people you know of?
I do quite a few, unfortunately, I have to say. And the thing is, I know these people tried everything before they reached that point to part with their family, I mean. It's never a quick or easy decision. Choosing to step away from your own family, that's huge. It's painful, complicated, and usually something you do only when there is no other way.
Yeah, I can imagine. And something else that strikes me talking about this is how people around them often react to, sometimes in really unhelpful ways. And that's something those who make this choice have to consider too. There's still so much shame and stigma attached to cutting family ties. People judge without knowing the full story, and that just adds another layer of pain,
Yeah,
unnecessary pain.
hmm, without a doubt. And I think we all have a responsibility in that. Now we talk about it, be careful of judging others because behind every choice like that, there's a reason, always.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop with the judging, please. Just let things process in your brain before opening your mouth. I think that's always a good idea.
So true. I've heard so many stories over the years. For instance, children who grow up having everything they need, a roof over their head, food on the table, clean clothes, a perfect facade, you can say. But emotionally, they are invisible in a way. Their parents don't see them, they never show up at school meetings or football games. They forget birthdays, and even when they're physically there, they're emotionally absent. They don't ask who their kids spend time with or even when they come home. It's like they're living parallel lives under the same roof in a way, like detached, focused only on themselves. And that kind of emotional neglect can be deeply damaging, not just for children, but for anyone trying to form a sense of self worth.
That's so sad, really. And I imagine if you grow up like that, that becomes your normal, right? It shapes your idea of what love and connection are supposed to look like.
Hmm. But then as you grow older, I think most of us start noticing the difference. I mean, you see your friends' homes, how their parents talk to them, how they show up, and you realize, oh, it's not supposed to be like this. And that realization can be really painful. I think even very young children can sense when something is off, when love is conditional, or when attention never comes.
Yeah, I think so too. I remember even as a kid, we can sense when something wasn't right in someone else's home. You can just feel it, even if you don't have the words for it.
That's so true. Kids are often far more aware than adults realize. And I really believe we all need more than just food and shelter to grow. You know, we need love, care, boundaries, stability, all those invisible things that build a sense of safety inside you. Without them, you miss out on the tools you need later, the tools that help you make good choices, to trust others and build healthy relationships.
Yeah. And those of us who did have that kind of stable, safe upbringing can so easily take it for granted. I mean, that's just the way it is because our fundamental needs were just met from very early on.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's one of the main reasons some people manage to get through hard times, because they had that sense of safety built into them as kids. It becomes a kind of inner compass, I think I can say, because you learn early on how to regulate, how to trust, how to believe that life can be good again, even after something bad happens. But not everyone gets that kind of start. I think a lot of the strength we carry as adults really does come from the foundation we were given as kids. That's my theory, anyways.
I completely agree. And it actually makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And that's also why I think it's so important to talk about and to recognize those who didn't have that safety growing up, but still managed to rise above it, to break free, to build a good and stable life for themselves, because that takes real courage, enormous courage and resilience.
Yeah, it takes so much courage. And it's something that truly deserves to be acknowledged and respected also. I can only imagine the kind of strength it takes to find that within yourself, to keep going when everything around you feels unsafe or unpredictable. And we both know people who had to do exactly that.
We do. So, this episode is for all of you, all the brave, strong souls out there who've had to walk away from family, stand on your own, and create a life without that safety net behind you.
Yeah, we want to say that we see you and we truly admire you. We can only imagine how much strength it takes to build a life on your own terms, especially when you had to do it without the support of family. And we really hope today's conversation brings a bit of comfort and maybe a reminder that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people you choose, the one who choose you, who show up, who love you, and who stay, even if they're not family by name. Before we dive deeper into this, let's continue with a bit of science because that's always interesting. And I like knowing what the research actually says about these things.
Sure. That is always interesting. Tell me more.
All right, so as we said, research shows pretty clearly that our early relationships shapes the way we handle life later on. The first years of life especially. They're like emotional training grounds. If you grow up with caregivers who are responsive and consistent, your brain actually wires itself to expect safety, to trust people, and to bounce back after stress. That's resilience in practice. But, and this is important, it's not a closed door for those who didn't have that. I mean, the brain is incredibly adaptable. Studies show that even adults who had chaotic or traumatic upbringing can rewire parts of their emotional responses through supportive relationships later in life, with partners, friends, mentors, even therapists. So, resilience isn't something you're born with once and for all. It's something you can build again and again throughout your whole life.
That's really hopeful, actually. I like that idea that it's never too late to heal or to build that sense of safety again.
Exactly. It's not easy, but it's possible. I think that's what makes this topic so powerful because for some, it takes decades to realize that they can't fix their family situation. I know people who have tried for years, sometimes well into adulthood, to repair broken relationships, to manage to make things work. They carry hope for so long before they finally reach a point where they just can't anymore.
Totally understandable. Letting go like that must be incredibly painful, especially if you've been trying to keep things together for years.
Yeah, I bet it is. One person I know had to do that after losing a close family member, and another to addiction, alcohol and pills mainly. The loss and the grief and the betrayal just kept repeating itself again and again. And when you live in that kind of chaos, it affects every part of your life emotionally, mentally, physically. It becomes this cycle of caring and disappointment and guilt also. And in the end, they realized the only way to survive was to step away, to stop trying to fix what couldn't be fixed.
That sounds heartbreaking. And I can imagine it's not just grief from losing people, but also the grief of letting go of the living ones, the relationships that could have been.
Hmm. And that kind of grief can be even heavier, I think, because the person is still there. You just can't have them in your life. It's like losing someone twice in a way. And another person I know went through something completely different, but equally devastating. They grew up in a home where there was neglect, and later it came out that there had been sexual abuse by a close family member also.
Hmm.
And that discovery turned their whole world upside down. You know, the betrayal, the denial from other family members, the silence around it. It was just too much. And after years of trying again and again, they had to cut all contact to protect themselves.
That is awful. I get so mad when I hear something like that. I can't even imagine how hard that must have been.
I know it was incredibly hard. But what's remarkable is how strong they've become, both of them actually. They built good life for themselves with supportive partners, good friends, and meaningful careers. And I think that's where the science ties back in because that resilience can grow later in life, even after trauma, through connection, through people, purpose, through finally feeling safe without your family.
It really does go to show how incredibly strong people can be, doesn't it?
Mhm.
The human capacity to rebuild yourself, to start over, to heal, even after everything you've been through. It's kind of inspiring when you think about it.
Yeah, very. And I think that's something we all need to remind ourselves of, whether we're the ones trying to heal or we're standing beside someone who is. Because healing doesn't always mean going back and fixing what was broken. Sometimes it's about finding peace in the life you build after the storm when you finally realize that peace doesn't have to come from where the pain began, maybe.
Mm, that's actually really comforting to hear. And when you think about it, we've seen that play out so many times in real life, haven't we? There's always someone who's had to struggle a bit more when it comes to family. Maybe they didn't quite fit the norm, or their home just felt a little less steady than others.
Mm. As you say, yeah, we really have. We grew up with friends who, looking back now, probably found a bit of safety and calm just by being around our family. Or actually, I know they did. You could kind of sense it even then, even if we didn't have the words for it.
Absolutely. They would come to our house for sleepovers, join our long Sunday breakfasts, even tag along on little family trips sometimes. It just felt natural back then. Like, of course, they would come along.
Yeah. And we never thought of it as anything special back then, maybe. It just felt natural. But now, as adults, it's so clear that some of them didn't have that same stability at home. They had loving, creative parents, but life was kind of chaotic for them. Lots of people coming and going, loud music, parties, late nights, divorced parents, new step parents, older siblings moving in and out, just this constant change. And that for me looked or seemed different, yeah. But I remember it was also a bit exciting in a way when I was small.
Yeah, a sort of bohemian upbringing, I remember. And I did also feel the same sometimes. But then that was more like, oh, she gets to do whatever she wants. And
Mm.
I didn't. But now I'm happy that I was not allowed to do whatever I wanted.
Mm.
And back in the 80s, too, people didn't really talk about these things, not in the same way as now. Nobody analyzed what was healthy or not. We just accepted life as it was. And in a way, we all kind of looked out for each other without even realizing that's what we were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Today, I feel like if a kid don't have that structure or stability, there might be professionals involved, teachers, social workers, psychologists. But back then it was different, simpler maybe, or just less talked about. And still, so many of those kids turned out really well, strong, kind, and grounded people.
They did. And that's so beautiful to think about. It shows that even when a home isn't perfect, maybe those small glimpses of love and stability from other families can make all the difference.
Yeah, sometimes it only takes one safe place, one family that lets you feel seen and welcome to give you a completely different sense of what home can be. And sometimes that's maybe all it takes to plant the seed of resilience in people or in kids.
And maybe that's also the real meaning of community, that we quietly take care of each other's kids, friends, neighbors, just by being there. It's something beautiful about that, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And that's something anyone can do. You don't have to be a therapist or a parent, even. Just being a kind, consistent presence in someone's life can mean the world.
And that connects perfectly to what we said earlier, that chosen family or even small acts of care can be life changing, really.
Hmm. Whether you're a teacher who notices a quiet student, a friend who offers a meal, or a neighbor who opens their door, those are moments that can build resilience.
It's actually really comforting to think about that love and belonging can come from so many different directions.
Yeah, it truly is. It's very hopeful and optimistic for sure.
It's funny, isn't it? How most of us grow up with this idea of what family is supposed to look like, the picture perfect version. Parents, kids, Sunday dinners, holidays, everyone getting along.
Yeah, that fairy tale image we're all fed from books, movies, everything. But real life, it rarely looks like that. Families can be messy, complicated, or even painful. And sometimes the people you end up feeling closest to aren't your relatives at all.
Hmm. I think that's such an important point because if your family situation doesn't fit that traditional mold, it's so easy to feel like something is wrong with you, like you're missing out on what everyone else has.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's why belonging is such a powerful word. It's not about where you come from, it's about where you feel safe and seen and accepted. And I think that's what creates real belonging.
I love that because belonging can show up in so many forms through friends, partners, colleagues, or even through shared experiences that connects people in unexpected ways.
Hmm. I know people who have found deep, meaningful families through support groups, creative communities, or even their workplace. And it's really beautiful, actually, how humans will always find ways to connect and rebuild when something is missing.
That's so true. It's like we're wired for connection no matter what. Even if life takes us in completely different directions, we still seek out those safe places, those people who just gets us.
And I think that's the real meaning of finding your people, because they might not be the ones you grew up with, but they're the ones who see you as you are and love you for it.
And maybe that's what family really means in the end. Not perfection, not shared DNA, but a circle of people who choose each other again and again and again.
Yeah. Family as a verb almost, something you build, nurture, and grow over time.
I like that. And I think it's a hopeful thought for anyone who's still searching that family can look 1,000 different ways and it can still be real, strong, and full of love.
Absolutely. There's always room to find your people, even if it doesn't turn out the way you once imagined.
You know, something I've been thinking about while we talk about all this is how incredibly hard it must be to let go of your family without becoming bitter. I mean, because it's not just the loss of people, it's also the loss of what could have been, you know?
Yeah, good point. It's not just the people you're grieving, it's the dream and the hope, the idea of what you wished family could be. And that can leave such a deep wound if you don't find a way to make peace with it.
Right. Because it could be so easy to get stuck in anger or resentment, especially if you tried for years to fix things and it never worked.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, bitterness doesn't protect you. It might feel like it does for a while because it gives you that wall, that sense of strength. But long term, it actually keeps you tied to the pain. It's like carrying a heavy backpack you never put down.
That's a really good metaphor, I think. I guess the real freedom comes when you can put that backpack down, not because what happened was okay, but because you deserve peace.
Yeah. Forgiveness in that sense isn't about excusing people's behavior. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of it. You can acknowledge what happened and set boundaries and still choose not to let it poison your heart.
And maybe that's also what healing looks like, being able to forgive and accept that you can't rewrite the past, but you can choose how to carry it because you can really choose that.
Yeah, you definitely can do that. And it's a human thing to feel both grief and gratitude at the same time, also. You can be sad about what you lost and still deeply thankful for what you've built since. And I think that's emotional maturity.
I love that. And maybe that's a good reminder for anyone listening who's been through something similar that you can honor the pain without letting it define you.
Yeah. You can walk away from family and still keep your heart open. And that is strength. That is real resilience.
Yeah. And I guess the big question then is, how do you actually do that? How do you keep from becoming bitter or shutting down completely after something like that? Because, sure, it's so easy for us to sit here and say that, but in reality, when this is your reality, it must be pretty damn hard.
Yeah, sure. Important point. And I must say, a good question to bring up here. I've actually read quite a bit about this because I find it fascinating in a way and honestly deeply human also. Psychology research talks a lot about something called post traumatic growth. I know we have mentioned this in earlier episodes, but it's basically the idea that after big losses or painful life experiences, some people don't just recover, they actually grow. They develop more empathy, more wisdom, and a deeper sense of meaning in life.
And that is, I must say, really beautiful that it is possible to grow after trauma, because it's not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's about transforming it into something new, right?
Exactly. But it doesn't really answer the question because how do you do that? But I do think it helps to know about this. It's not toxic positivity or just move on. It's more about slowly shifting from why did this happen to me to what can I learn from this? And it's not easy, not at all. It takes time, maybe therapy, support, and a lot of inner work. But it is possible.
Yeah, I guess that healing doesn't mean forgetting or erasing, but integrating in a way, making it part of your story that doesn't hurt so much anymore.
Yeah, maybe that's a good thing. And one of the things research really highlights is self compassion. People who can treat themselves with the same kindness they'd offer to a friend, they tend to heal better. It's almost like the brain softens its defenses when you stop attacking yourself for what went wrong. And this, I think, is very important.
That makes so much sense, I think, too, because when you've had to cut ties with family, you often carry guilt of that too, right? Even if you know it was the right thing to do, there's this inner voice that says, I should have tried harder, or I'm a bad daughter or son.
Yeah, exactly. I think that guilt is so common. But guilt and responsibility aren't the same thing. You can feel sadness, you can even feel regret, but still know that what you did was necessary for your own well being. And that is something therapists often help people work through, learning to hold both truth and kindness toward yourself. That I think is very important.
Hmm. It's interesting because it's almost like you have to reparent yourself in a way, give yourself the stability and love you didn't get before.
Hmm. That is actually a big concept in trauma therapy, reparenting. It's about learning to meet your own needs, setting boundaries, comforting yourself, and building safe relationships as an adult. It's slow work, maybe, but incredibly healing.
I can see that it really is. And I guess that's where the community also comes back in again, because even if you've had to walk away from family, you can still build new connections. You can still find your people. I feel like this is a thing that is important to repeat again because it's never hopeless.
That's such an important point. Research even shows that having just one consistent, supportive person in your life can completely change your trajectory. It could be a friend, a mentor, a partner, or even a colleague, someone who truly sees you. That's how people rebuild trust and belonging after loss or trauma. And that requires openness. You have to dare to be open about your needs.
For sure. Openness is key to that. So In a way, resilience isn't about being tough or independent. It's about being open to love again, even after you've been hurt.
Exactly. It's not about shutting down to protect yourself. It's about staying open enough to heal. And that, of course, is the real challenge.
You know, hearing all this, I keep thinking that family, in the truest sense, is about safety. It's about being seen and accepted for who you actually are, whether that comes from the people you were born to or the ones you found along the way.
Yeah, and it's important to remember too that every family has their struggles. Some just hide it better than others, I think. And that's one of those quiet truths we all eventually learn, that no one really has the perfect family, no matter how it looks from the outside or on Instagram.
Exactly. We all grow up thinking that some families just have it all together. I think we all do. You know, the ones with matching Christmas sweaters and happy holiday photos. I posted some of those. We all did.
Oh.
Yeah, maybe I'll go buy some matching pajamas now online after. I don't know.
Mm,
Maybe I shouldn't actually.
maybe you shouldn't.
No, that's when we actually look closer though, everyone is carrying something. Pain,
Mm,
loss, conflicts, all wounds. It's just part of being human.
yeah. And I think that maybe if we realize that, that can help us to let go of some of the shame and comparison too, because when we accept that no family is perfect, we can start building the life and connections we need instead of chasing some picture perfect version that doesn't really exist.
Oh, that is so true. And maybe that's the real gift in growing older. You start seeing people and families for who they really are. You understand that love can exist even when things are messy, and that belonging doesn't have to mean perfection.
I love that because it's in those imperfections, the cracks and the chaos, that real connection often grows. That's where the tenderness and the authenticity live.
Yeah. And maybe that's also what helps us forgive, not necessarily forget or excuse, but soften. Because once you realize everyone's fighting some kind of battle, it becomes easier not to carry bitterness.
Yeah, I think so too. And as we said, letting go of bitterness doesn't mean pretending the pain never happened. It just means refusing to let it define the rest of your story. And that's how healing starts.
I like that. And that's really what this episode is about, isn't it? Finding your people, creating belongings, even when life and family didn't turn out quite the way you imagined.
And remembering that there is no such thing as a perfect family, only real ones doing the best they can.
That is so true. And for everyone listening, if you've had to step away, rebuild, or start over, we see you. You're not alone in that.
You're definitely not. And maybe the most important thing, you still get to choose love, connection, and peace, even after everything.
You still get to build a family, even if it looks nothing like the one you came from.
And maybe, just maybe, it turns out even better. You have to believe in that.
And that feels like the perfect place to end today's conversation.
Yeah. Hopefully, this has been a meaningful conversation for all of you listening. And also a little reminder that no one's life is as perfect as it looks on the outside.
Yes. But do you know what would make it a little bit more perfect for us?
No.
It is if people will actually follow us on our channels, subscribe, and
Of
show us
course.
some love. We would really appreciate that.
Yeah, please do. Let's
Okay.
grow our own family in here.
Yes, let's do that.
Grief, life, and family.
And love. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Nina had a dream, all black and white. We were talking in English, yeah, that ain't right. Two Norwegian sisters miles apart, but that dream lit a fire, put a mic to the heart. Katrine's in the States, Nina's back home. Two voices, one mission through the microphone. Grief and life, the highs and the lows. We hit record, uh-oh, where the file go? Oh, we fumble, we stumble, but baby we shine. Lost the intro, never mind. Wi-Fi shaky, cables crossed, but our hearts stay strong, no moment lost. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. Grief walks in, pulls up a chair, says I'll stay a while, yeah, life ain't fair. But we mix it with laughter, a toast in hand, finding light where the dark still stands. Ba-da-da-boo-doo, is this thing on? Mic's on mute, oh well, move along. Ba-ba-dee, ba-ba-da, take two. Oops, too late, let's laugh it through. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. So plug in, lean in, let's take our time. No script, no filters, just rhythm and rhyme. We're here, we're now, we're in our prime. Two sisters, one dream, all